Did that sound incredible? Listen to it again. Bet you're thinking you want a carrot now, don't you? Every time I eat carrots, raw carrots like this, they get, like, pieces get stuck in my permanent bottom retainer. I don't really care. A weird fact about me, but baby carrots freak me out. There's just something... Nothing personal. There's just something so weird about the uniformity of them and how they're, like, all the same size and they're kind of... I don't know, they feel kind of, like, too smooth on the outside. It just weirds me out. Like, I don't peel my carrots, which, now that I think about it, sounds so strange. Peeling carrots. Why would you do that? Today I thought I would talk about something that I am very passionate about, that I've loved my whole life, and that's books. Ever since I was young, since I learned how to read, I've loved books. And I thought I'd share with you what I like to read and what I'm reading right now. My favorite category, my favorite subject of literature, my favorite genre is historical fiction. I love stories set in historical settings. I love reading about history, but I think that it can get boring a little bit just reading it from a historical educational perspective. And when you read about history or you read stories of people that's very exciting and relatable in a historical setting, that to me is the most exciting, the most fascinating. I enjoy it so much. I haven't read every book out there, and I certainly haven't read all the best in historical fiction or all of the books in historical fiction. That brings me to what I'm reading right now. So what I'm reading right now in historical fiction is like the greatest saga that has ever been written, and it's called the Master and Commander series by Patrick O'Brian. These books take place during the Napoleonic Wars, and they depict the battles on the sea between the man-of-war ships. And it's between, you know, obviously the French and the British Royal Navy, and it is so fascinating. And I think what really gives credit to this is that even though for the first, 3 books, I did not understand the terminology, like I didn't know any sailing's terminology. There's so many different sails on these ships, and the way that there's a whole language behind sailing that I didn't understand. And I read it anyways because the characters are so incredible. I would have to say probably like my favorite literary figure that I've ever read in any fictional setting is in this book. And the characters are so great. There's something I love about British English dialogue, and especially when it's older, because this is set obviously a long time ago, and I just find so much like comedy and enjoyment, and it's so rich and deep the way that the language is presented, and the characters are so incredible. So I am really deep into that series. I think I'm in like book 10, 11, 12, something like, I'm not even paying attention. There's 21 and a half books or something like that. The author literally was writing one when he died, a adorable English old gentleman, and I wish that he could have written so many more. And on one hand, I want to just like blaze through them because they're so good. I could do nothing else with my life but read those books. But on the other hand, I like them so much that I'm like, I don't want them to end. I'll be so sad when it's over. So I'm just kind of going through it a book at a time, and I'm just like enjoying it so much. It's the kind of series where you're reading it and you don't want to put it down. And then as soon as you put it down, you're just thinking about it all the time. I think about them almost every day. And Lucas was asking me, well, why didn't you tell me about what you're reading? Like, tell me about your books. I know you're super into them. And I told him, I can't explain to you, I can't describe to you, you won't get it. When I'm reading it and I'm laughing so hard, it's not going to make sense to you because you don't know these people. It's like real people I've learned about and that I've become friends with. And I can't, like, you don't know them. So how am I supposed to tell you why what they said was funny, or it just doesn't make sense. And even the parts where I think that you don't need to know any background, you don't need to have any background knowledge to understand why this is funny. Even those parts, when I read it to him or show it to him, it doesn't land the same way like it does for me. So I'm really enjoying that right now. I super recommend it to anybody who loves to read, to anybody who loves historical fiction, to anybody who loves good characters, because I think that is really the heart and soul of the series, is that the characters, the main characters, are so incredible and so wonderful and deep and rich in all of their glorious characteristics. So I really recommend that series. Now, I'm also reading something else. So normally what I do is I read two things at once. I read something for just pure pleasure that I enjoy. And then at the same time, I read something for personal development. And the reason I do two things at once is because I used to read just for pleasure. Nothing would stop me from reading a good book. And then I kind of got introduced to personal development and reading books for that. And I got totally obsessed with it and just dove into reading books. And I read 100 books. I mean, there's so many. At first, it just was a whole new world that opened up for me that I loved, that I really enjoyed. I like doing personal development a lot because it makes me into a better person. It shapes me to be the person I want to be and become. It gives me a better growth mindset. It helps me face the day and the problems with a positive mindset. It helps me stay inspired. It helps me look at all my challenges as just challenges and not blocks. It keeps me solution oriented. There's a lot of benefits I see in reading and doing personal development regularly. So, however, I was doing so much of that I got really burnt out on that, and I started to have to make myself read every day, and I forced myself to read every day. It became such a chore and so unpleasant, and I lost all love for reading. And then my aunt sent me a Kindle with all of her library on it, and the Master and Commander series was on it. For years, her and my other aunt had always read them, loved them. And that was the first thing I wanted to read, because I'd always wanted to read them. But it was such an enormous volume of books that I thought, do I buy all the books or whatever? So when I started reading that, I got so hooked that it was all of a sudden my fire for reading came back, and it felt so great. Which brings up, I think, a really important point. I always loved to read. Since I can remember being able to read, I've loved books. And I can remember being a kid and just sitting on the couch with just reading for hours. And I can remember so clearly my mom saying, "Mariah, get your nose out of the book and go outside and play." And I would just sneak the book under my shirt and go outside and either sit in the car or just find somewhere where she couldn't see me so I could just keep reading. And I always thought I'm weird or out of place. There's obviously something wrong with me, this isn't normal or something, but I just didn't care. I kind of liked to read so much anyways. And then once talking to my aunts, I realized they loved to read as much as I did. I wasn't the only one out there who liked to read so much, which was really reassuring at 10 years old. My aunt said something to me that I think is really profound, and she said, if you don't like to read, you simply haven't found what you like to read yet. And I think that's really true. If you find something that interests you, you will like to read about it. And I think reading is becoming more and more lost in our culture today because we're so glued to technology and online reading and kind of blogs and forums and articles and all these things that we read online. We don't usually sit down and read a book. And it can be a regular book, or it could be an e-book or a book on, I have my Kindle, like I said, which I love, and then I have my iBooks on my iTunes, which I have on my phone. So it's anywhere I go, I can have a book that I keep with me at all times. Back to personal development. My personal development book that I'm reading right now is called Mindset, and I really like this book. It is incredible. It's brilliant. It talks about the differences between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and it talks a lot about studies that they did with children where they tested them and challenged them with things that were too difficult for them in educational or puzzles, things like this, and how they reacted to the challenge and how they reacted to failures. And it's fascinating. It's not only a great book for you as a person, as a personal development to grow, It's incredible as a parent. It's almost a better parenting book, I think, than a personal development book, because it teaches you really how to raise your kids in a way that they see challenges and failures as good things for their life. So that's what I'm reading. I'm actually listening to it on an audiobook because for my lifestyle, it's really hard for me to find enough time to read as much as I want to. So I usually like to listen to personal development. I don't find that it's quite the same. You don't get the same interaction with an audiobook that you do with a regular book. When you read, it's definitely different in the way that your brain processes it from when you hear something. But it works really well for me and for my lifestyle. I can listen to it in the car. I can listen to it while I'm showering, while I'm doing my makeup. If I'm home alone and I need to pick up, I can listen to it. So I find that that is a great solution for me and my lifestyle. At this point in my life, I don't have as much time as I would like to for just reading. So that's what I'm reading right now. I hope you found it interesting. Please share with me what books you're reading, because I think there's nothing better than getting other people's favorite books in your queue of what you want to read next. I really recommend Mindset. I think it's a fantastic book. I really recommend the Master and Commander series for those of you who love to read. You might think of it as a commitment because it's so long. It is like being introduced to your next best friend. I swear you will not regret it. I love these books so much. How's that for promotion? I should get paid for this. Like, obviously I'm not, but oh my gosh, do I love it. Please, please do share with me what you like to read. What are your favorite subjects? What are your favorite books? And what you would recommend. It could be anything from parenting to personal development to fantasy to drama. Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to reading them.